this fell apart at the same time as Kirk went down. That first series against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Jags actually performed very well that day on offense, but and in a couple other games too in the next few weeks. But overall, something was amiss. And I don't know how much of that had to do with Kirk. I do think some of that had to do with Trevor and trust factor, because you lose a guy like that. I think you really trust him, Austen. I mean, I think that's the guy. Evan Ingram, too, and Zay Jones as well. But I think that's the guy. He knows where he's going to be so good IQ-wise. He's such a good pro. As part of the reason the Jags paid him to bring him over here is to get this kind of culture in. And it wasn't just drafting Trevor. The culture in place, I think, had a lot to do with guys like Christian Kirk, and now we continue to see it with Eric Armstead. You bring those kind of players in here to kind of be pros and show the young guys what it looks like. Well, this is his room, right? I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. hopefully is a stud, and Gabe Davis is a good football player. But this is Christian Kirk's room, and there's no question about it. Marvin Jones isn't here. Calvin Ridley isn't here. Zay Jones isn't here. This is Christian Kirk's room, and he's a significant part of that offense.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a slot receiver, I think we've talked about all the time on the show. There's a couple friends that a quarterback can have, in terms of trust. A tight end's one of them. I think Evan Ingram, you saw that last year with his reception totals, especially when Christian Kirk went down, and also as the slot receiver, where when they moved Christian Kirk to the slot, he really came into his own and had some of his best numbers ever. So, yeah, when Kirk went down, you could definitely see the trust factor was lacking then of who else do you go to. Because Calvin Ridley, you were still kind of building that rapport a little bit, it seemed like, and you didn't have Zay Jones as well. So it kind of put Trevor in a tough predicament. I mean, thankfully you did have Evan Ingram, who was pretty dependable. And I think what was the last game of the season when the ball went off his hands, interception, against Titans. But overall, I mean, Evan Ingram turned out to be that guy. But you have Kirk coming back now healthy. We'll see how Gabe Davis fits in this whole thing. And then obviously Brian Thomas Jr. as well. I mean, you have a lot of things to like in terms of, number one, receivers and tight ends that if it goes to hell a little bit, you can depend on, hey, I know where you're going to be at. But also now you should have some big name players as well, and Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis to kind of take the top off a little more too. So you have a little bit of everything. But yes, I do agree that Christian Kirk is going to be the backbone. He's going to be the constant in how this whole wide receiving core is going to operate.
Hey, Kim, I don't know how quick you can set it up. I think Stewart's still listening. He's already inside. He got away from at least that part of the rain and the bumper guy, and has made himself inside and might be able to give us a live look at OTA number 1. Only a couple of these kind of – the way it works is just some of the periods are open to the media to be able to get video of. And so I think this one is. So there you go. There's a live look at the Mech and the Jags kind of getting some early work on the field. It's interesting. This is phase 3, I believe they call it. And so they've been on the field a little bit. It's kind of the first time we're getting our look at the whole team on the field. And when I say whole team, Josh Allen's in Arizona. Gabe Davis just had a kid. And so it's not everybody. But there's the guy, and there's that quarterback room. Mac Jones out there with C.J. Beathard and Trevor Lawrence in the rain in Jacksonville Jags headquarters. And what's significant about that picture right there? The last time we saw Trevor Lawrence really on a football field here at Miller Electric Center, he's got braces all over his body. He's all bandaged up. I mean, he looks clean and healthy, which he told us he was, but it took a while for him to get healthy, and now Trevor's healthy again.
What I'm very curious to see, too, with Mac Jones, keep in mind, Mac Jones, when it rains, has never really been throwing the ball when he came from the Patriots. It was more of just handing the ball off the entire time. So I'm very curious to see how Mac Jones is going to handle actually throwing balls in the rain now, because obviously Bill Belichick wouldn't allow him to do that. He looks pretty natural. Not bad.
He's got the glove on.
Not bad.
Nice.
He's like, I got it. Hey, Bill, eat your heart out. She should have turned me loose a little more, running it 60 times against the Buffalo Bills.
I think that was more screw you, Austen. I mean, I'd be more than hand off in the rain, pal.
Well, hey, I didn't say he couldn't do that. Obviously, Bill Belichick said he couldn't do that. Did you watch the games? I did.
Trevor Lawrence, you wonder what guys like Trevor work on in the offseason. And as Stewart shows us a little bit of the big guys, too, and there's Brian Thomas Jr. Getting loose and ready to go today. What does a guy like Trevor, do you think, need to work? Everybody works on their craft a little bit. You take a break, you get healthy. There's still some of that. But these guys all have their own quarterback gurus and things, and I don't think he needs to be like a topic of discussion like it was with Blake. Like Blake would go out to California. It's like, okay, shorten that release, try to get the motion better, like all these different things. We don't talk about that very often with Trevor Lawrence, right? But he's got to be still working on what?
I mean, I think ball security would be the top thing. And, it's hard to simulate that. You're not going to have guys just chase you down and try to knock the ball out of your hands for the entire summer. But I just think, watching the film a little more, dissecting it, having that internal clock be a little better. But that's probably the biggest thing I would say. And I'm not sure you bring in a new receiver, so it's hard to get a rapport right away. But I'm sure him and Christian Kirk have hung out a little bit, maybe throwing the ball around, toss the pigskin around Brett Favre style with his Lee jeans or whatever. So, yeah, I just think building that rapport. My bad, Wrangler. Right. So, hey, man, Wrangler, sorry. But I just think that building that rapport with the receivers is probably the biggest thing he has to do going forward.
Well, and there you see receivers. I think these two guys right here can be forgotten about with all the newness that goes on, and that is Evan Ingram coming off an unbelievable season. He's been so good for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then Christian Kirk, of course, we were just talking about. These two guys are his staples, Trevor Lawrence's staples, the guys they trust the most, which, by the way, there's so much significance to keeping them healthy, too. They've got to stay healthy. And Evan Ingram is, if he has another year, I'm not saying he's going to catch 100. I don't think there's enough footballs for 100. But if he has another 75, 80, 85 catch season, man, holy cow. What a career in Jacksonville it's turned out to be.
No, without a doubt. Really a resurgence, if you will. It'd be a good story to tell. And once again, a guy that I think when he came here was a little question of what he could actually do for this team. Yeah. And obviously he's achieved and exceeded all expectations.
There's Jags OTA number 1, Trevor and Mac
this is
Jones.
Great, man. I can sit here and watch this all day.
Yeah, I wonder what you say, as we see Doug Peterson, of course, what do you watch in these? Like when you go out to camp, you see it from a different lens. I always say there's so much going on. Like when we get to camp time, people be like, hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Like, well, I don't know. You go in there, you got to have a plan. You can't watch 15 different things. Like you just can't. So, like you might see something that I don't see, and that's just the way it works. That's why we have a lot of media out there. And if you follow everybody, then you can pick something up maybe from somebody different. Then there are things that we all see at the same time.
Hey, I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure what this drill even is, right? You just kind of practice like tackling this ball. Yeah, all right, Trevor, I see you.
Ball security.
Ball security right there. But, yeah, the wide receivers were kind of like tucking it and going down to the ground a little bit, maybe making some business decisions, not wanting them to go through a tackle. But if you're asking me what I'm watching, obviously me being on the defensive side of the ball, that's where I primarily go. And obviously when you're not wearing pads, it's hard to gauge exactly what these guys can bring to the table. But technique's a big thing, and I broke this down a couple years ago when Kayvon Chason was a rookie. I said that he had great get-off, but when you put him next to Josh Allen in terms of it was a spin move I was breaking down and dissecting. And it was literally just one little hitch step kind of affected what his spin looked like compared to Josh Allen, who was very sound in terms of his technique. And, it's those little finite details that as an edge rusher where if you get those things down, you can be successful. If you can't get those things down, maybe we're talking about a 1 or 2 sack season and obviously talking about him not being here anymore. So to me, you could start to see the details a little bit of what these guys can bring to the table and what they have to work on.
Yeah, and as we watch handoffs, I'm going to get into the running backs in just a moment, but just back to, you saw Trayvon Walker. Also, number 94 there is Mason Smith. He is a big guy. It's there is that when you notice when you go out there and you're like, holy cats, man, that guy is a big dude. And I think we're all going to say that initially on number 94. He is... The Jags look good. There's a nice job by Weber to get him. Look at him move, too, at that size. He's fun. He's fun to get excited about. That's a player, again, that if healthy, we are going to inflate going into the year. If he makes it to September and he's feeling good and looking good and healthy, he's a guy that I think is just going to jump in camp and we're going to get all excited about and probably too excited about because it's a difference between performing once you get in between the lines and on Sundays. But it's hard not to get excited about the way the Jags look, the athletes the Jags have when they get off the bus.
Yeah, obviously size is a big thing in terms of physicality and being able to stop the run, especially in the defensive interior. And this was an issue last year, and it was addressed in the draft. So, yeah, I'm excited to see these big bodies. Now, can these big bodies move? Can these big bodies play and be productive? Time will tell. But, listen, you can't teach the size of Mason Smith. You can't teach, the athleticism of Mason Smith. Now, can they put it together with Ryan Nielsen? Can he get the best out of Mason Smith? And we'll see.
I think people forget, by the way, 96, Adam Gotts is still on this team.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a nice job in his career here. Not a headline guy, but he's done a nice job. Back to where we're looking at, I think we're going to take a look at some receivers doing stuff, Parker Washington, and it's okay. Weber doesn't have to get us back to the running backs. One of the messages out of today was Doug Peterson saying, hey, we got to keep ETN fresh. Mm-hmm. We need Tank Bigsby to do more, to evolve, to continue to get better. And we need ETN to continue to evolve and get better as well. So it's going to be an interesting balance because if they do get more out of Bigsby, they keep ETN even more fresh. I think he's as dangerous as they come. I love ETN. I think he's underrated. Mm-hmm. I think his career so far the last couple of years has been terrific. They feel like he's even got more in him. And I think Bigsby can help even get more in him because there's a bunch of things going on. ETN can have another really nice year. He can lead the way. He can be the explosive guy. He's got to be the main guy. But if Bigsby starts to emerge a little bit, now you've got the 1-2 punch. You've got a little bit different style. You've got a goal line guy hopefully delivering around the end zone. And it also makes that draft class a little longer last year. Yeah. So there's a lot to go with Bigsby here, a lot of impact that he can make in a bunch of different narratives, storylines, and actual play.
No, I think if the NFL has showed us anything, it's that when you have these fast twitch, explosive running back types, you don't want to make them the bell cow and give them, 25, 30 carries a game. It's just you can't hold up. Even like Bijan Robinson last year was supposed to be this bell cow, and yeah, he had a great rookie year. He showcased a lot of skills, but once again, he got kind of worn down a little bit just because of taking all these hits. There's not a lot of Derrick Henrys to go around where you can give the guy the ball 30 times and you're confident, okay, we'll see you next week again, and you can do the same thing. So I do want to see, obviously, Tank Bigsby take that next step forward. He has to. There has to be a guy to help lighten the load a little bit of a Travis Etienne. I mean, I always compare it to what Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara were able to do in New Orleans. Once Ingram left and it was the Alvin Kamara show, still a great running back with all due respect, but he kind of faltered a little bit because he is getting so much more of the workload now, and that does take a toll on your body. So, yes, if Tank Bigsby can come in and give you 12 to 15 carries, and then you can obviously supplement that with the explosiveness of Travis Etienne, well, now you're cooking. Now you have something because anytime you can get different looks from the backfield, the better.
Yeah, this is everyone's favorite part, a little pitch and catch out at practice and Jags OTAs as the quarterbacks are throwing to the wide receivers. And Brian Thomas Jr. Obviously in action here for the Jags. Gabe Davis, once again, if you're just jumping in, had a baby over the weekend, so he's not at the OTAs. But Christian Kirk back and healthy. Evan Ingram obviously doing his thing. And we'll see
that throw. Ooh,
there
that's a nice connection.
Thomas Jr.
Tell you what, that was a $56 million a year throw right there. If I saw one,
that was the 23rd overall pick catch.
That was effortless right there.
That was
Trevor.
to the house. It was going to be.
Oh, I was done. Yep. I'm kind of. I'm noticing something that I'm a little surprised by here. I mean, once again, it's OTAs. I'm going to take two into account in it, but in the past, when we had like Jack Del Rio and company, and I think Larky kind of fell in this label too, we always had a tape. You had to have your ankles taped, had to have your wrists taped. You had to treat it like it was a game, essentially. And I don't see that here. Huh. I mean, a little side note.
Oh, that's interesting. I would never notice that.
Yeah. Because, I don't see guys with, tape or anything on the wrists.
Why would that be?
I mean, once again, I just think that liability for injuries, I think that was Jack's thing, but also, he wanted to simulate, you're in a game. And obviously, if you get your ankles taped in the game, you got to get him in practice
That's
as well.
That's something I've never really looked at much, but now I will.
Yeah, and we have Spat here, yeah. So there's Trevor. That's Trevor, I think?
That's Mac. Yeah.
It's Mac, okay.
Those look like Mac's legs.
Those are some Mac calves. Yeah, Trevor Lynch. I'm not sure if I don't think he might be having a light
again, it's
job,
noteworthy to me that the last time we saw him on a practice field, which we didn't even see him practice fully the last 3 weeks of the year, I mean, he had that tape. I mean, we're all over it.
Yeah.
We had taped up ankles. We had braces on the legs. I mean, there was a lot going on with Trevor at the time, and it is good to see him healthy.